Good afternoon, Carl.
Greetings, Michael Kitces. Where are you? Are you at home?
I'm at home. I'm at home in Northern Virginia where it is not snowing like Utah, and I'm okay with that. We're
Yeah.
not good at snow here. We get a half an inch to an inch of snow, 2 or 3 snowstorms a year. That's enough to completely shut down the city and send all the kids home from school for a day or two. So we're not very good here at snow. Here in DC at snow. But we get it periodically. It's part of the seasonal rotation.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about that, like snow days, because we almost never get them but when we do, it's like a big deal. This morning, speaking of snow, I was out removing some snow really early before going skiing, and there was a weird noise. And I'm like, what's that noise? It was elk bugling in the yard. There was a herd of elk in the yard. So there.
We don't have that in DC.
I know, but we do. So this is fun because we also don't have the Lincoln Memorial in Park City. So like there's, you pick your poison.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fair.
All right. We're talking about something cool, like how to talk about how to show our work or something.
Yeah. So we had this great question that came in from Cody that just I'll frame it up the way that he did. So Cody said, I'd love to hear a discussion around showing what we do, like beyond just fees on our website. Should we share real examples of our work, like planned deliverables? Because public perception doesn't change until people know what we do and how we do it and why it's important. So I thought this was an interesting question. It's kind of I think it's a marketing question, but there's sort of a broader, like, changed public perception of financial planning meta level thing here as well, of to what extent should we show real examples of our financial planning work, which I think also has some interesting undertones, because that raised the question of, well, what is real financial planning in the first place? Like, which thing are you going to show? So how do you think about this question of showing what we do as financial planners?
Well, I love that question. And given that it came from Cody, there's like a really interesting example of that like we can talk about, and I think would be more in line with where you might be thinking, like actually kind of showing the actual, like almost like screen recording of a technical thing that I figured out, which I think would be super cool and super smart. But where I go is I had this experience early on, and this is just largely because like I should have been just some sort of art person. I don't know what that means, but I just remember thinking like, okay, when I go to an artist's website, and I was specifically thinking about when I go to a photographer's website, there's always this button up top that says work, or it says portfolio, right? There's always this button. And I know what happens when I click that button. If it's a photographer, I'm gonna click portfolio or work, and it's gonna show me pictures that the photographer took. And I remember thinking that one day, I was like, man, what if my website just said work and you click that button? What would be there? And I thought it was such a powerful, at least in my head, it was such a powerful question. Like, what would you put there? And I think the only answer is like people, right? Like humans' lives.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like a sample financial plan.
I know, not spreadsheets.
Oh, is there, Carl? You were supposed to say a PDF.
No,
People.
An Excel,
PDF.
a spreadsheet, like my picture of my 17B12 or whatever it was, reverse Polish.
HP12C. 12C, no 10Bs
No,
here.
no, that's the second part of this conversation I think would be fun, given that Cody asked the question and the way you would think about it. I think it's really interesting. We should riff on that for a little bit in a minute, but I'm thinking people, right? And so here's what I did. I hired a writer, and I asked clients, I can remember like 3 or 4 of these that we did. They're so awesome, right? I sent a writer out to interview clients. And I remember, what's the best example? Brian and Denise, one of my favorite examples. And I told the writer, I said, your goal is not to get them to say nice things about me. Like, in fact, if you say that, I can't use what you write, right? Because I was worried about case studies. The goal is just go interview them about the things that have happened in their lives that have to do with money over the last 3 or 4 years. And I said, specifically go ask them about the pottery studio that, I'm just making up names here, that Denise wanted. Denise, John, what name did I use? I can't remember. We'll just use John and Joe.
Brian and Denise.
Okay, John and Joe. Brian and Denise, whatever. So Brian was a I can remember what kind of doctor, a doctor. Denise had, I think, a fine arts degree and had always wanted to build a pottery studio in the backyard, build a studio in the backyard so the neighborhood kids could come. And, she could teach adult classes. And, she did it, right? Like after a couple of years, it was one of their major goals in their financial plan was to build this pottery. She did it. Like, it was so cool. Like, it's one, the writer went out and asked them about that, wrote this great piece. It was only two pages, a page and a half. Beautiful pictures, right? Whole thing. Amazing, right? Then Dan wanted to, after retiring at sort of forced retirement at age 55, picked up paragliding. And he went to Nepal and he paraglided. And apparently in Nepal, you can paraglide with these huge birds. I don't know, I want to say vulture, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's like a giant condor or eagle. And you paraglide and they come fly next to you. Like crazy, right? So she went and interviewed Dan about that. And then I remember Dave and Jill, I'll call him. Dave wanted to take time off. He wanted to take a sabbatical for 8 months while his kids were still young and drive across the country with them and homeschool them and teach them about geography and visit all their relatives while the kids still want. He used to say, if I do the normal pattern, I'll work like crazy till my kids are 18 or 19 and then they'll have pink hair and they won't want to talk to me. And he's like, I want to do it now. Well, they did it, right? And they sent me postcards from the trip. And so I was like, go capture those 3 things. And then when I got them, I was like, man, this needs, and I sold the business before I actually did this, but this needs to be my annual report. Like an annual report just of stories of cool things people have done. We don't have to say Carl made that possible.
Yeah.
It's pretty self-obvious, right? In fact, if they said that, we couldn't use it. So to me, capturing the experiences that financial planning allowed, that's what I would want on my show, on my work button.
So, all right. So I have to be like, true honesty here, like 50% of me thinks that sounds really cool. I get it. The picture of the client who got to paraglide with the condors because my financial planning for them made it possible. And the other half of me is basically doing a you've got to be kidding me script. Using a great way for Van Gogh to show how great his artwork is. Let's just put pictures of museum patrons standing with their mouths agape at how great they think the art is. No, if I want to see how good an artist is, show me the freaking art. Don't show me the patrons in the museum ogling the art. Show me the art.
No, that is the art. Nobody said Carl is great. They said the art. See, this is where this is why this is such a perfect topic, because I can completely see.
I'm back on my PDF, man.
I know, that's why this is a perfect topic, is because I know that I'm right about this, and I'm also know that I'm wrong, right? The idea, and I want to talk about this because I think we have tools now that, and I've seen people do this, that I'm like, dude, do more of that. Show your work. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But I just want to put a fundamental stake in the ground that is the work, right? The fact that Dave took a sabbatical is the work, right? That is the results. I'm not saying of oogling at Carl. I'm saying just here's an amazing story. Our clients did some cool.
That's Brian's story. That's not my story. I'm not here to not here to, well, I mean, it would be cool if I actually wanted to paraglide with the condors, and you're like, apparently Carl's the one that helps you paraglide with the condors, but like, I got my own dreams, I got my own goals. So like, yay, you helped Brian paraglide with the condors, but like, that's not what I'm here for, and that's not what I'm looking for.
That is exactly what I was trying to generate, is like, my financial person, my money person, has never talked to me about the idea that when I retire, I want to have a garden. I want to volunteer at the local community garden. Right? All we talk about is the portfolio design, and he sprays me with facts and figures about how bear markets always recover. Right? Like, this is fundamentally, to me, showing somebody that the difference between fake financial advice or product-driven sales and real financial planning is, it's aligned with your values and goals. It helps you realize why. So if I can see somebody else realizing their why, I can say, it's not about flying with condors. It's not about taking a sabbatical. It's about me saying, oh, this is what it means to think about money, is to get clear about what I want. And I'm sticking with it. Now,
That's why you can stick with it, but like, I still just want to put a really nice sample financial plan on my website.
Okay, let's talk about that, because I think that's such a cool idea. Like, I think,
I mean, just like, if that's what I'm going to lay down, like, here's, I mean, to me, like, there are two documents that I would ideally want to have out there. One, like, put an actual sample financial plan. I still remember I had a conversation with a planning friend a couple of years ago. Jim, whose last name shall not be named. And because it actually was Jim, and I don't want to give him trouble. And so I was having this conversation with him about, like, why don't you put a sample version of your financial plan on your website? And he said, the truth is, like, it doesn't look that good. Like, I'm afraid if I actually put that on my website, people are like, that's what I'm paying $5,000 for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that he would lose people. To which I said, well, maybe for $5,000 plans, you should like hire a graphic designer to spruce that thing up a little bit. Like,
spruce that thing up.
Well, I mean, also, like, not just about putting lipstick on a pig, but yeah, like, if you want to charge a premium fee for a premium service, yes, the reality is often people expect a little bit of polish on that. And if you wouldn't proudly put your financial plan on your website and say, this is how much money it costs, then maybe you need to take a hard look at how much you're investing into the financial plan offering and deliverable that you're putting out there. Like, what would you need to do to make it presentable enough that you would proudly put it out there and say, darn straight, this is what you get when you pay me $5,000 or $3,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 or whatever your planning fee is.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah, please.
Because what I was thinking was, forget the static snapshot. Like, what if you just did a screen record? Get a decent little mic. You've been asked a question. Walk through, and the idea isn't here to give away, like, oh yeah, I don't want to give away the value. No, it's like, if you could show, like, here's how I think about portfolio construction.
Yeah.
Here's like, walk through a financial plan. Like, oh, I just finished this financial plan. I've of course changed all the information, or I anonymized this financial plan, or I built a dummy financial plan, whatever you need to say to make sure people know you're not sharing something. Like, and one of my favorite parts about what we do here is this little thing. Like, when I move this lever, this thing happens, right? Like, and we can play what if games here. Like, I just think, like, actually showing your work. And the reason I get fired up about this is because we're seeing artists and creatives do this all day long, right? Like, Austin Kleon's second book, After Steal Like an Artist, I think his second or third, was called Show Your Work. And artists are starting, you don't buy art. Despite your earlier comment, you don't buy art, you buy the artist. And right, I think that's another way you could approach this, is like, let's show our work, like actually doing it. I love that idea. I think, like, again, coming from Cody, like, Cody would be very good at that.
Well, and I will say in that vein as well. So doesn't quite get to Cody's question about like how do we show this sort of to the public in mass, but just your comment reminded me. So one of the books that had the biggest impact on me in the early days of my career was a Patrick Lencioni book called Getting Naked. Yeah, well, I'm sure he picked the title to be provocative when he did it originally. But it's not that naked. It's not that kind of naked. The essence of Getting Naked is this idea that most of us in any kind of business that's consulting. Patrick wrote it. I think he was in a more traditional consulting business, but I think it entirely applies to advisors as well. The traditional approach that we have is something to the effect of, I'm going to talk to you just enough to show you that you have problems and that I have solutions, but you can't have the solutions until you come back and hire me and pay me money. And they say, like, we end out in this world where I'm supposed to set you up to recognize that you have problems and tease you just enough about the solutions that you want to hire me to give you the full solutions. And that's kind of the consultant speak and the consultant approach. And the sort of the story and the lesson that Patrick teaches in the book is that it's far more effective to take someone that you might consult with or financially advise with, and as he puts it, just get naked, which essentially means don't hold anything back. Just put it all out there. Just start helping them immediately on the spot in the very first meeting. There's no talking
100%.
about the value of financial planning. Just literally start doing financial planning. Like
100%.
What's going on in your life and what are you dealing with, and what brought you to the meeting, and just starting to go down that path. And even beginning to answer questions that you can answer right on the spot. And I know a lot of us are like, oh, no, you can't say anything on the spot because you have to gather more information. It's like, come on, we know a lot of the answers up front. We don't want to give it to them because they're supposed to hire us for it after we tell them they have a problem. But there's a lot of answers you can start giving people basically on the spot. And we all have this hesitation, just like hard-grained in us. If I give them too many of the answers right now, they'll have the answer and they don't want to work with me. And the lesson that gets taught so well in the book, and that just I bought into it enough to start doing it and have absolutely lived it since then. We all hold back because we're afraid if they give them the answers, then they won't need to come back anymore. And what happens in truth is, if you give them the answers, they have such a good experience, they just want more. Because you're not going to solve literally everything that's ever happening in their financial life in one meeting. And so the more value that they feel like they get out of the meeting, because they literally see the value of financial planning because they're already experiencing it by having meaningful conversations and getting asked questions no one's ever asked them in the very first meeting, becomes to me like the most direct way to show the value. Like, we always try to take this approach of, I want to show the value enough to get you to hire me, instead of saying, I'm just going to start giving you value and solutions, because you're not going to want it to stop once I start. And you'll
100%.
follow through as a client from there. So I would doesn't quite speak to Cody's question about how we just show the public the value of financial planning, but would highly recommend for anybody that's never read Patrick Lencioni's Getting Naked, go read that book. It is incredibly powerful to get you comfortable about not holding back on your own value.
I 100% agree. Like, just give it away. And I think the way to give it away is show, like, to Cody's question, like, how do we show what we do? Show, like, I got asked this question today. Like, imagine a screen share on that, right? I got asked this, and the reason I keep using screen share is that there's no video on you. Like, forget the production quality stuff. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Like, I got asked this question today, as a financial planner, here's what I do. Right? Like, and you're not doing that to build a Q&A for somebody. I wouldn't be worried about that at all. I would just be like, oh, isn't that, because what happens then is people get to see, back to the, you don't buy art, you buy the artist. People get to see the way you think. You can even make sure the questions are targeted questions of ideal clients, right? So even in that, you're demonstrating, like, oh, he works with entrepreneurs. That's really interesting. Oh, she works with neurosurgeons. That's really interesting. Like, I think showing, we should do more of this. If I were doing this, that's all I would record. I would record a small screen share as often as I would almost want to say daily. I would record a small screen share. I would post them on the Toot Machine, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I would say, if you love this, you would love the work we do. I would direct them to a landing page where you can sign up for an email. And then I get a chance to communicate every week with them. And then they'd become clients. And then I would be great. And everything would be done. And I could buy a Sprinter van and just go ski.
That was quite a conclusion. Like, I like how it ultimately got right back to skiing.
For
Just
sure.
beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
From my end, I mean, the other thing I would say beyond, like, just put your plan, like, seriously, put your deliverables on your websites. I mean, appropriately anonymized, obviously, sample client scenario, but show people what they're really going to get and what the deliverables look like. And if you have hesitancy around that because you don't think they're going to show well, like, it's cool. That's actually, I think, a reality for a lot of advisors, but that's a solvable problem. There are, like, amazing graphic designers out there that can make cool templates. If you use a lot of financial planning software where you can't actually modify it, that's why a lot of advisors now are making, like, 3 to 5 page executive summary, shorter things, maybe not 1-page plan, but shortened plans. Like, make that your beautiful deliverable. You can slap the planning software output on the end of that. But I would say, number one, like, show actual samples of your deliverables and make them something you'd be proud to show. And the second thing I would add is show the process of what you do. So for firms that, some firms I know now are building out really big, like, annual client service calendars. Here's all the things that we do for you over the span of the year. Maybe you haven't built something that intensive, but, like, we all have some process of the things that we do for clients on an ongoing basis. Like, and make it look like a calendar, multi-year calendar. Like, over the next 3 years, here's what's going to happen. Like, we're going to meet every 6 months. Our investment committee is going to meet every quarter. I'm going to rebalance your portfolio every month. I'm going to touch base with you about your IRA contributions in the spring. I'm going to touch base with you about annual tax planning in the fall. Just start showing out all the things that you do that clients get, your process and how you serve clients. And when you actually put all of it down on a piece of paper, it adds up to a lot of stuff. And so just show it, all the different client touches, all the different events, the webinars, the newsletters, the meetings, the investment committees, the portfolio reviews, all that stuff packaged into one, and say, like, when you want to know what you're going to be paying for on an ongoing basis, like, this, beautiful 1-pager, I had a graphic designer make pretty and laminated, like this. So deliverables and a process document of what we do. You can go the whole Dan Sullivan route and then, like, name it and make it your, like, standardized named thing. But the essence of it is, if you want to show them what the financial planning looks like, show them the process of financial planning, what that means for you, and show them the deliverables that you're going to get. And no, that's not everything of the value of financial planning, but relative to consumers have no idea what the heck it is that we do with these fuzzy words, it starts to make it more tangible.
Totally. Yeah, I remember we created something called the 17-point wealth management audit. And that was the idea behind that.
Do you still have that? Like, can we share that? Because
we've mentioned this before, and everybody asked for it. And I don't know. I think we found something. I think we put something together. So, I mean, if people email, we'll find. I think
you need to sell it. Like, you're more experienced now. I'll bet you if you made it again, it would probably be 22 points at this point.
Yeah,
so,
I can't remember. I think the team was like, Carl, it wasn't 17 points. It was 15 or something. I can't remember, but I recall it being the 7. But the point is,
and the number rolls off the tongue really nicely.
I know, it's always so funny how people like, can we get a copy of that? Michael just told you how to make your own. Like, just make a list of everything you and or your team do, put it on one piece of paper, and this is a demonstration of another way to show what you do. Love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl.
Cheers, Michael. That was super fun.